North Korea. It's got to be one of the most mysterious and isolated countries on the planet, right? And it's been that way for over 75 years. So in this explainer, we're going to dig into that history, that wild, turbulent journey, to figure out exactly how it got to be this way.
When you look at the whole story, it all really comes down to this one big question. How did this nation, which basically emerged from the wreckage of World War II, end up becoming the world's most closed-off state? How does that even happen? Well, to get the answers, we've got to go right back to the start.
Okay, so our story kicks off, not with a choice made by Koreans themselves, but by the global superpowers of the time. We're at the end of World War II, and what happens? The United States and the Soviet Union literally just draw a line on a map. And that single line would seal the fate of the entire Korean peninsula, creating a divide that, well, it's still very much there today.
And what's just wild is how fast this all went down. Think about it. In 1945, this line was supposed to be temporary, just for administration. But then, boom, by 1948, you suddenly have two separate countries. And then, just 2 years later, they're thrown into a devastating war that basically locked that division in place with blood and concrete.
And this is really the core of the whole thing. The Korean peninsula basically became a giant chessboard for the Cold War. You've got the North, the DPRK, a communist state propped up by the Soviet Union and led by a man they installed, Kim Il-sung. And then you've got the South, the ROK, a capitalist state backed by the US. You couldn't have two more opposite systems, right? This was the perfect recipe for decades of conflict.
All right, so to really understand what happens next in North Korea's story, we have to wrap our heads around this unique ideology that Kim Il-sung came up with. It's called Juche. And trust me, this one word is going to define pretty much everything about the country from here on out. So what is Juche? Well, at its absolute core, it's all about radical self-reliance. The idea is that the Korean people, and only the Korean people, are the masters of their own destiny. That means they have to solve every single one of their problems, whether it's economic, military, you name it, completely on their own, with zero help from the outside world.
So here's the really important part to get. Juche wasn't just some lofty philosophy. No, it was an incredibly powerful political tool. It became the perfect excuse for sealing the country off from the rest of the world and for the state to have total, absolute control over its people. It created this Fortress North Korea mindset, and its #1 job was to protect the Kim family's grip on power.
Now, for decades, there was a huge irony at the heart of the Juche system. For a country all about self-reliance, it was actually leaning really heavily on aid from the Soviet Union. But then the 1990s hit, and poof, that support completely vanished. All of a sudden, this ideology of being able to stand on your own 2 feet was about to face the most brutal, catastrophic test imaginable.
Just try to imagine this for a second. Your biggest supporter, the one who gives you fuel, food, money, just disappears overnight. That is exactly what happened to North Korea in 1991. When the Soviet Union collapsed, it was like someone just snipped their main economic lifeline. The fallout was, well, it was immediate and it was absolutely devastating.
This all happened right as Kim Jong-il was taking over from his father, Kim Il-sung. And this dark period has a name inside North Korea, the Arduous March. It was, to put it simply, a catastrophic, nationwide famine that brought the entire country to the very edge of total collapse.
And the human cost, it's just staggering. It's impossible to get exact numbers, of course, but the best estimates suggest that somewhere between 600,000 and 1 million people died. They starved to death or died from diseases related to starvation. Just think about that, 1 million people. It's an absolutely horrific price to pay for a country that was built on this promise of being self-sufficient.
So, after surviving this national near-death experience, the regime came to a very clear conclusion. Never again. They could never, ever allow themselves to be that vulnerable again. But the lesson they took from it wasn't, we need to open up to the world. Nope, it was the opposite. It was, we need to build a bigger, stronger wall. And that led to a massive shift in their whole national strategy.
This new strategy was called Songun, which means military first. And the logic behind it was brutally simple. In what they see as a hostile world, the only thing that truly guarantees your survival is a powerful military. So from that moment on, the army got dibs on everything. Food, fuel, money, everything went to the military first, even if it meant ordinary people had to go without.
And the ultimate goal of this military-first policy? You guessed it, nuclear weapons. And you can see how they did it, step by step. They ramped up their research in a big way, which led to their very first nuclear test back in 2006.
After that, they just kept going, systematically making their weapons more powerful. Their missiles reached longer until they developed ICBMs, missiles that could potentially hit other continents. And when Kim Jong-un came to power in 2011, he didn't just continue the policy, he doubled down on it. He made the nuclear program the absolute centerpiece of his rule. And you have to understand, for the leadership in Pyongyang, these weapons aren't some bargaining chip they're willing to trade. No way. They're the ultimate, non-negotiable insurance policy that guarantees the Kim dynasty stays in power.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. Where does this all leave North Korea today? We're going to look at the country as it is right now, a nation that's been shaped and hardened by this incredible 75-year story of division, ideology, and sheer survival.
So what's the end result of this long, bumpy road? Well, you've got a state that is still one of the most authoritarian on Earth. You have a country that's been hammered by international sanctions, all because of its nuclear ambitions. You've got a population that still struggles with not having enough food. And yet, through all of that, it's a nation that now holds the one thing its leaders believe will keep them safe forever: a powerful nuclear deterrent.
And that really brings us to the final, and maybe most important question. There's no doubt the regime has shown an incredible ability to survive against all odds. But as we've seen, that survival came at a terrible cost to its own people. So the question we're left with is, what is the final price of that survival? And can this isolated kingdom, can it ever really change course?